So at the 12-month period, we would be able to collect all the metrics that I had detailed out in the PowerPoint presentation. The one exception is the collision data. We would not have a full year of collision data available to share with the board at the 12-month period. There is a lag in the time in which that data is shared with us with other city departments. So it would be closer to the 14 to 15-month time frame where we would have a full year's worth of collision data to share with this board.
Yeah, but we would know, like, if some collision, we wouldn't know the full 12 months of collision data, but we would know like 10 months of it probably, right?
We would have probably about 9 months worth of it, I would think.
Well, hopefully that would be enough. Why is it one of the most important bike streets in the city? The question I've gotten from folks is, why are we doing this? I mean, like, why do we need to make it safer to bike on Valencia? Why not just move the bike lane to like Van Ness or Guerrero or some other street? Like, choose a street that isn't already trying to do so many other things. So why are we trying so hard to make it safer for cyclists on Valencia Street and not just asking them to use another street for this mode of transportation?
Three quick reasons. Number one, it is a flat, direct route that connects well with Market Street, which is the other prominent through bike street in the city, as well as at the south end with the streets that take you further south. Number two, wisdom of crowds. People have biked on Valencia Street long before there was bike infrastructure on Valencia Street. So in some ways, it's our job as planners and engineers to learn from the cyclists who I think do know where they need to go. And three, the Mission's a very complex neighborhood from a transportation point of view, because you have a street, Mission Street, that carries 40 or 50,000 bus passengers per day. You've got streets like South Van Ness that carry heavy regional traffic, Guerrero as well. Valencia is pretty well positioned within that grid to, there needs to be a street that has a little bit more safe space for bikes along the north-south corridor. So Valencia is a good for that reason too.
This fear of cars driving into the center lane to get around traffic that's in the driving lane. I mean, is that something that, are you worried about that? Is that something that you're afraid of? And what kind of assuages those fears for you?
So we did hear feedback after the updated designs were released in February of 2023. I think you've heard plenty of that feedback as well during the public comment period about the types of materials that are being used to provide separation between the bikeway and the vehicle lane. That is something since February 2023, we have also been working with city partners to increase the amount of bollards and materials that we are placing in that buffer to really discourage drivers from coming into this bikeway. As a part of this quick build process, we can continue iterating on what those materials look like, how they're spaced, and trying to figure out, what is it that we need to do to really make sure that cars are staying out of this bikeway.
I would love to see it.
The bus lane curb?
Yeah. Is that it? I can't really see it.
Can we wheel it over?
Can we wheel it over? It's a little heavy.
I love a demo. So is that understanding that it would be every 30 feet there'd be these large bollards, and then there would be a 90 feet stretch where there would be this, but nothing above it?
So in the narrower section of Valencia between 15th and 19th, where the roadway space is a little bit more limited, what we're currently looking at is having about 30 to 40 feet of this product, then a K71 bollard in line with it, and then another 30 to 40 feet of it, and then another K71, and then a 10-foot gap to allow people on bikes to get in and out of the bikeway if they choose to do so mid-block. In the section where we have more space on the roadway, the proposal is to have 90 feet of this bus lane curb, and then adjacent to it, about a foot away, we'll also have a number of delineators or K71s approximately every 30 to 40 feet. And again, we'll still have that 10-foot spacing to allow folks to get in and out of the bikeway.
And do we have the flexibility to like add a bunch more bollards if we see that it's not working or we see that cars are in it? I mean, it looks like there's like orifices or holes. I don't know what the proper word for it would be, but
yes, absolutely. We can definitely continue iterating on it, and if we're seeing certain locations where we just need to add more bollards or more materials to really send that message of you should not be in here as a person in a vehicle, that is definitely something we're able to iterate upon in this project.
Okay. Do you want to ask more questions about the bollards? And are you confident that, I think is it 10 feet right now in between them? The bollards, is that what the project
the current proposal that we have reviewed with other city partners is the current spacing is 30 to 40 feet between the bollards. There will be a 90 feet stretch of bus lane curb continuously, followed by a 10-foot gap. So within that 90 feet of bus lane curb, there will either be delineators or K71s either in line or adjacent to that bus lane curb at approximately 30 to 40 feet spacing. We are meeting with our city partners on Monday to further discuss the spacing of those bollards, because our hope is to increase that.
All right, talk to me about parking enforcement.
Sorry, can we stick on that? Can
Yeah.
we just stick on that? Because we heard a lot of people say 8 feet, which is about, what, 4 times as many bollards as you're proposing. Can you just help us understand why we wouldn't sort of respond to that specific request, why we wouldn't go for the safer option?
So one of the things that we were trying to do with our design for Valencia is to not necessarily have that kind of white picket fence kind of look coming down the corridor with just, bollards after bollards. So we were trying to find that right balance between some newer materials like the bus lane curb, which we actually brought with us today for those who would like to see it, and these kind of higher vertical delineation. We're definitely hearing the concerns and the desire to have them spaced a little bit closer, and we're taking that seriously and are looking into doing that.
I just want to make sure everybody's aware that in our resolves clause, there is specific direction that we're providing to the staff that they should implement sufficient protective measures and materials to ensure that vehicles are not able to obstruct that lane, and to do that on a continuous basis, and to take any means necessary to ensure that the bike lane remains free of obstruction. So I just want to understand, you've got a lot of things on your plate. What is this really going to look like in terms of that continuous monitoring and iteration that you're talking about, these continuous tweaks? Is that like a weekly or a monthly? We're going out a visit, or are we using social media to see if there are obstructions? Like, how are we going to make good on that pledge that this is going to remain free of obstructions?
I do have to say that the 311s that we do receive, we do take those seriously, and as we're receiving those, we are going out and checking. As a part of our evaluation, we do collect video data, so we're kind of getting a sense of kind of over a certain period how many people are encroaching into the bikeway and such. So that is part of the video data collection that we do as a part of the evaluation.
Okay, so it sounds like it's fairly continuous.
So one way of getting cars to not be in this lane seems like the bollards, and the other is parking traffic enforcement. So is there a revised PTO plan for Valencia during the length of the pilot? And if there is, what does that look like?
I don't have details on that plan with our parking
PCO,
control officer.
sorry.
Yes, with our parking control officers. But we do have a meeting with our parking control officers, I believe it's next week, to start talking about what enforcement will look like. We have requested their support with this project, and they're fully on board to help us with that as we're rolling it out, as well as during the early phases as people are getting used to the traffic configurations out here. Another big piece of this rollout for the project is the education piece. We realize center running bikeway is new, it's different. How do you as a person on a bike use this? Someone that's in a vehicle, how do you use this? So as a part of our education component, we will be educating all users of the roadway about this new roadway configuration.
Okay. What will the emergency brake look like? What are you looking for as kind of, hold up, something just happened, we need to stop everything? I mean, what would get you to call an emergency board meeting or put this at the top of the agenda and say, y'all, this is not working, we need to stop this? What would that look like, and what would that process look like? Because at the very base of it, like, we're trying to get people not to be killed. 2 people were killed over the last 5 years. And so, that's like, at the end of the day, that's why we're here, sitting here trying to make sure it's the best it can be. So what does the emergency brake look like, and what's the process for that?
So there are a few things that we'll be looking at very closely. One is, if people are continuously driving in this bikeway, then there is clearly something with the design that we need to improve upon to make sure that it is adequately clear that you, as someone in a vehicle, you should not be in this bikeway. The second component that we're really following closely will be the left turns. There would no longer be left turns allowed off of Valencia onto the side streets. We know that banning left turns, it makes it safer for pedestrians and bikes. We also know that banning left turns is crucial for this bikeway design because we do not want cars turning into bikes that are traveling down the middle of the street. So if we are seeing major issues with either one of those components, we will definitely have to discuss and figure out how do we either fix the design to make sure that it's working safely. So for example, for the left turn restrictions, we have reached out to the police department to see if we can get some support with some early enforcement of those left turns to really help people learn and know that you should not be making those left turns off of Valencia.
I hear that, but what if, heaven forbid, someone get hit by a car or there's a grave injury? I mean, Director Tumlin, what would you do if that were, God forbid, to happen? And I don't know if I'm about to say God in this chamber, but God forbid that happened. What would you do?
Well, it depends upon we would look at the causality and other factors. We would do a full investigation, as we always do. And depending upon the circumstances, we would either make an adjustment or, if there was nothing that we could do about it, we would do nothing. We could also have some data that we couldn't predict that would say, you know what, the center morning design is worse than the previous design, and we can make a decision to rip the whole thing out and start over again.
Got it.
I think I'm hearing a consensus of this board to shorten this pilot to 12 months, knowing that we have a lot of options to extend it or to even cut it shorter than 12 months if the metrics are telling us that's the right decision. So I'm gonna kind of call that a direction.
If our initial evaluation suggests that this is a disaster and it needs to be undone, you all can vote to shorten the pilot dramatically, and staff would recommend that.
First, Kimberly, how long have you been working on this? I mean, I feel like I met you 6 years ago. You came to my coffee shop before I was on this board asking what I thought about a bike lane. That was the first iteration. So how long have you been working on this, and how long has the department been working on this?
I've been working on this since fall of 2017.
And do you know how long the department, maybe Tom, has been thinking about bike lanes on Valencia Street? Was it before your time?
It goes back before my time in 2014, but it's one of the most important bike streets in the city. We've been working on it since at least 1999.
Tom, you've been thinking about Valencia a long time. What do you see as, what is an ideal long-term vision for Valencia in your mind?
So I think an ideal long-term vision for Valencia requires us to bring all the things that are out of balance in the street back into balance. And that probably means net less through traffic, because it's a street that's such a destination, everybody who spoke today testified to it's such a wonderful place to come and be. But it's going to require some capital investment too. The traffic signals are very old. Kimberly has done incredible creative work, and she's hampered by the fact that our traffic signals cannot support the kind of multimodal designs that we do on other streets. So upgrading the traffic signals, thinking more about the public realm, beyond just the traffic. I think that's the ideal. But it only works if we can bring all the pieces into balance, and long term, that's going to mean figuring out what the right amount of traffic volume we could accommodate on the street is.
Okay, I have...
The placemaking pilot and whether this board wants to weigh in on the pilot itself at all. We heard a lot of people say this is a key component, that this is part of the larger vision, potentially looking at more space pedestrianized, more spaces to gather, support local economic vitality.
As you can imagine, I have also prepared comments. So they'll be relatively short, but maybe Christine, now's the time. So with regards to this process, the story of this process of reimagining this street, in my opinion, is a microcosm of what I believe is wrong about how San Francisco does things. After 8 years of study, by my count, countless hours in community meetings, walkthroughs, forums, and many more, we have a pilot for 8 blocks of Valencia Street. If you're counting, that's 1 year for every block. In the meantime, 2 people's lives were ended on the street. Guys, we had a 4.6 magnitude earthquake during the course of public comment today. Our city is facing some real and present challenges that outweigh these 8 blocks. What are we going to do when something really big happens? How can we act fast to ensure the safety and security of everyone that uses our streets? How will we rise to the occasion to meet them? I'll tell you how we meet the moment. Look at what we did 3 years ago, when we had a once-in-a-century pandemic, and we had to reimagine the use of our streets all over the place. We experimented. We were willing to try new things because we had to. I remember when I was asked by the mayor's office to tell my neighbors, to explain to them why they had to shut down. We had to give them something to hope for. The MTA allowed people to close the streets and let small businesses spill out and experiment with them. And what you see in front of you is the lighting ceremony that we had for the Valencia Lights project. I think this is the potential of what Valencia could be like, a real space of community gathering and joy. I remember those early days, even during the worst air quality we've seen in a while, having my staff or myself personally going out there with a safety vest and closing the street to save my fellow small businesses from closure. And so the reason I bring this up is I think we know what it feels like to try bold, exciting things with our streets because we just did it. And so I understand all of the constraints and all of the concerns, but I just don't want us to forget that spirit of having to do things that might seem impossible or unpalatable, but our hand was forced. Valencia, in my opinion, is the greatest street in our city. Its street life represents what is best about San Francisco, a true mix of new and old, San Franciscans, high and low income, innovators, and immigrant restaurant owners. The kind of street where a gay Jew with a dream can try his hand owning a coffee shop of his own. It is a magical place. It is my firm belief that we are, with all of the new uses of the street, we are trying to do too much with too little space, which is why I'd like to use this timeline to do the necessary traffic study to evaluate turning it into a one-way street. We talked about the placemaking pilot. I know we can't necessarily finish it, but it just seems like we're trying to do too much with too little space. In my estimation, the community is divided. I'm a merchant. The merchant community is divided on this pilot. Some love it, some hate it. I think it's messy. I think it's risky. I think it could totally fail. But like I said, San Francisco is known for its spirit of innovation, of new thinking, and I would hate to be a part of a board that wouldn't allow staff to try something new. The worst thing that could happen is someone gets hurt, and it sounds like we have opportunities to evaluate it constantly to make sure that if that does happen, we can change it. So I say, let's give you a shot. Let's see how it works. Staff has asked us to give this a try, so I say let's try it out and plan for a better future for the greatest street in our city. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Yekutiel.
Cultural districts to understand, is there low-hanging fruit already that folks have already identified as ways that they want to activate Valencia? Because I'm pretty sure that those plans likely exist. So we should definitely, to advance the work, that might be something we want to do, a strategy we want to take. But yes, so I think just to go back to the 12-month or 18-month, I think, if folks are if the consensus of the team is that we should keep it at 12 with an option to extend, if that's the terminology we're using, I would be in favor of that as well.
Okay, thank you for weighing in on that. Director Tumlin, I know you wanted to speak to this particular topic of timeline.
Just to clarify, and I think you're already heading in this direction, that
the schematic that we saw about the new commercial loadings had it ending at 11, but I know in the staff report it's far more complex than that. And so I guess I just wanted to hear your plan for, I know it's block by block, but when are we planning on ending general commercial loading, which is 30 minutes, and converting into the 5-minute Uber Eats kind of Grubhub loading?
Sure. So when we created the curb management plan, it really was a bespoke plan where we looked at what are all the uses on each block, what kind of demand do they generate, when do they generate that demand, and really tried to tailor it to the specific needs of the block. So depending on the block and even the side of the block or the end of the block, it's going to be a different configuration. And so some areas it may end at 11 a.m. and then you're going to switch to our general loading zone, which is a 5-minute zone that any type of vehicle can use, because we saw that there was a lot of maybe lunch demand from a restaurant. Then there are other places where we were really seeing more evening demand, either for dinner restaurants or event venues. So the commercial loading will go until our typical 6 p.m. and then switch into either passenger loading or our general loading zone. So it really is going to vary based on where you are in the corridor and what types of needs different businesses have.
Which cross streets are getting metered parking that didn't have them before?
I think Tracy might know better off the top of her head because it's a little bit more complex in that some side streets have one side metered and not the other side metered, and then some side streets have no meters on either side.
So yeah, I don't know exactly off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up, but the ones that already were metered were 23rd, one side of 23rd, 17th, and I think 19th. So 20th, 21st, and Liberty and Hill.
Can we talk about Liberty for a second? Because as we know, the folks that live on Liberty are very vocal, and they have expressed a lot of concerns about this. What I would love to be able to do, just like we've done on some of the slow streets, is just come to them with data. They're really worried that there's just going to be a ton of cars going down their street to cut through to Guerrero. Do we have a plan to just track if there's going to be an increase in cars on that street?
Well, the volume.
Yeah, I guess.
Where are you guys measuring the volume?
Yeah, because we are going to do 2 counts, so I guess that'd be a question for Kimberly if we can add perhaps that onto that street.
Yes, so as a part of our evaluation, we are collecting vehicle volume data.
Are we doing it on Liberty?
Yes, we can do that.
We can, or oh, so we are. Okay, so that's
Yes,
the
we
plan.
are.
Okay, great. I think it'll be great for the Liberty Hill residents, those are in the room, to know that we're going to do that, and that we are doing evaluations at a 6 and 12-month period, and we'll be able to look at that when we talk back. I only have a couple more questions. I'm not going to talk about side running bike lane. I thought I wanted to, but as Director Heminger mentioned, it's not really what's before us. I'll just say that it seemed like there's been a lot of chatter about why this over that, and I think it would have just maybe engendered a little bit more trust in us to explain to the public in a deeper way that why we chose to go this route. I know we did it in the presentation, but there just, I think it seems to me a bit of a missed opportunity because I know that both of you put a lot of time and effort into choosing this as your pilot, understanding that there would be a lot of questions about it. Okay, I'm just going to try to ask a couple questions that, fears that were presented to me that maybe you can help assuage. Kimberly, the first is this fear of, and hopefully you can, but also fears are fears, and there are risks involved in any experiment.